Hello, dear friends. Welcome back to our channel, Bible for Kids. Today we'll continue our amazing journey through the Old Testament, discovering another wonderful story about faith, courage, and hope. In our last episode, we learned about Jacob and his beautiful dream of the ladder that reached up to heaven. Now, we'll meet one of his sons, a very special young man full of faith and imagination. His name was Joseph, and his story is one of the most inspiring in the entire Bible. So, take a deep breath, sit back, and open your heart. Because today, we're going to learn about Joseph, the young dreamer. 1. Jacob's family. Jacob had many sons, 12 in total. They would one day become the 12 tribes of Israel. But among them, one stood out, Joseph, the son Jacob had with his beloved wife Rachel. Joseph was kind, curious, and hard-working. He helped his father tend the flocks and loved learning about life and about God. But what made Joseph truly special wasn't just his kindness or intelligence. It was that God had a great plan for his life. Even though no one knew it yet, Jacob loved Joseph more than any of his other sons. As a sign of this love, he made him a beautiful coat, full of bright colors, red, blue, green, yellow. It was unlike anything anyone had ever seen. Joseph wore his colorful robe with joy and gratitude. But sadly, this made his brothers very jealous. 2. The brothers' jealousy. Joseph's brothers didn't like how their father treated him differently. They worked hard every day caring for the flocks and felt ignored. Little by little, jealousy began to grow in their hearts like a seed that turns into a thorn. Joseph didn't realize how much his brothers resented him. He was innocent, and then something happened that made everything worse. Joseph began to have strange and wonderful dreams. Joseph's dreams. One night, Joseph dreamed that he and his brothers were tying bundles of grain in the field. Suddenly, his bundle stood upright, while the bundles of his brothers bowed down before it. When Joseph told them about it, they became furious. "Does that mean you will rule over us?" they thought angrily. But Joseph wasn't trying to boast. He was simply sharing what he saw, trying to understand what it meant. A few days later, Joseph had another dream. This time, he saw the sun, the moon, and 11 stars bowing down to him. When he told his father and brothers, Jacob was surprised, and his brothers were even angrier. They believed Joseph thought he was better than everyone else. But in truth, these dreams were messages from God, revealing that one day, Joseph would have a great purpose, even though no one could see it yet. 4. The brothers' trap. One day, Jacob asked Joseph to go check on his brothers who were tending the flocks far from home. Joseph went happily, wearing his colorful robe, unaware that danger was waiting ahead. From a distance, his brothers saw him coming. The bright coat shone in the sun. They looked at each other with anger and said, "Here comes the dreamer! Let's see what becomes of his dreams now." But the oldest brother, Reuben, didn't want Joseph to be harmed. He suggested they throw him into a dry well, planning to rescue him later. And so, when Joseph arrived, they grabbed him, tore off his colorful coat, and threw him into the dark pit. Joseph cried out for help, but no one listened. As he sat trembling and afraid, his brothers ate their meal nearby, ignoring his cries. Then they saw a caravan of merchants passing by, men traveling to Egypt to sell spices and goods. An idea came to them. "Let's sell Joseph to these merchants. Then we won't have his blood on our hands." And so they sold their brother for 20 pieces of silver. The merchants tied Joseph and took him away toward Egypt. Later the brothers took Joseph's robe, soaked it in animal blood, and showed it to their father. When Jacob saw it, he believed his beloved son had been killed by a wild animal. He cried for many days, not knowing that Joseph was still alive. Beginning a new, difficult chapter far away from home. 5. Joseph in Egypt. the merchants traveled across the desert until they reached Egypt, a powerful land of pyramids, pharaohs, and temples. There they sold Joseph as a slave to a man named Potiphar, an officer in Pharaoh's guard. Even in a strange land far from his family, Joseph did not lose faith. He believed that God was still with him. And he was. Joseph worked hard, stayed honest, and treated everyone with kindness. Potiphar noticed that everything Joseph did succeeded. Soon, he put Joseph in charge of his entire household. God blessed everything that Joseph touched. Even as a servant, he was faithful and patient, trusting that God still had a plan. Chiosel, the test of faith. But one day, Joseph was falsely accused of something he didn't do. Potiphar believed the lies and threw Joseph into prison. Even then, Joseph didn't complain or lose hope. He continued to pray, to trust, and to do what was right. And once again, God was with him. The prison guard noticed that Joseph was wise and responsible, so he put him in charge of the other prisoners. Joseph helped and comforted those who were sad, becoming a light even in that dark place. And one day, something amazing happened. Dreams in the prison. 2 of Pharaoh's servants, the cupbearer and the baker, were sent to prison. One night, both of them had strange dreams and didn't know what they meant. Joseph saw their worried faces and said kindly, "Tell me your dreams. God will help me understand." The cupbearer told Joseph he saw 3 branches of grapes, and Joseph explained, "That means in 3 days you'll be restored to Pharaoh's service." The baker told his dream about 3 baskets of bread, and Joseph sadly said, "That means in 3 days you will be punished." And everything happened exactly as Joseph said. Before the cupbearer was released, Joseph asked him, "Please remember me when you are free." But the cupbearer forgot him, and Joseph stayed in prison, waiting patiently for God's perfect time. 2 years later, Pharaoh, the king of Egypt, had 2 troubling dreams. In the first, he saw 7 fat, healthy cows, followed by 7 thin, ugly cows that ate the fat ones. In the second, he saw 7 full heads of grain, followed by 7 thin, dried ones that swallowed the good ones. No one in Egypt could explain what the dreams meant. That's when the cupbearer finally remembered Joseph. He told Pharaoh about the young Hebrew prisoner who could interpret dreams. Pharaoh immediately sent for Joseph. Joseph was brought out of prison, washed and dressed before standing in the presence of Pharaoh himself. Pharaoh said, "I've heard you can interpret dreams." Joseph replied humbly, "I cannot, but God will give Pharaoh the answer he seeks." Then Joseph explained the meaning. The 7 fat cows and 7 full heads of grain meant 7 years of plenty, a time of great harvest. The 7 thin cows and 7 dried heads meant 7 years of famine, a time of hunger that would follow. Joseph advised Pharaoh to store up food during the good years, so there would be enough during the bad ones. Pharaoh was amazed. He said, "Is there anyone else in whom the Spirit of God dwells like this man?" And so Pharaoh made Joseph the governor of Egypt, second only to himself. Joseph went from prisoner to prince, all because he trusted in God. For 7 years Joseph worked tirelessly. He built storehouses and gathered grain from every harvest. When the famine arrived, Egypt had plenty of food because Joseph had listened to God. People from all over the world came to Egypt to buy food, including Joseph's own brothers from Canaan. They bowed before him, not recognizing that the powerful man before them was the same brother they had sold long ago. Joseph recognized them, but stayed quiet at first. He wanted to see if they had changed. Over time, he saw their hearts soften. They were no longer proud or cruel. Finally, Joseph could hold back no longer. He began to cry and said, "I am Joseph, your brother, the one you sold into Egypt. But don't be afraid. God turned what you meant for harm into good. He sent me here to save many lives." His brothers were speechless, and then they wept together, hugging in forgiveness and joy. Joseph forgave them completely and invited them and their father Jacob to live in Egypt, where there was food and safety. Joseph never let pain or betrayal harden his heart. Even when life was unfair, he stayed faithful and patient. And because of that, God used his life to bless many others. The boy who once dreamed of stars bowing down now saw God's promises come true before his eyes. Every tear, every waiting season, every struggle, all had led him exactly where God wanted him to be. Children, Joseph's story teaches us something very important. Sometimes things don't make sense. Sometimes people treat us unfairly, or we face hard times that seem endless. But God never forgets his children. Even when it seems silent, God is working behind the scenes, preparing something wonderful. Joseph waited years, but he never gave up. He trusted God's plan and saw that God's dreams are always bigger than our own. So if you're going through a difficult moment, remember Joseph. Keep faith, be patient, and trust that God is still writing your story. And it will be beautiful. And that's how the story of Joseph, the young dreamer, ends. A boy betrayed by his brothers, sold as a slave and imprisoned, but who became one of the most powerful men in the world. Because he never stopped believing in God. When Joseph looked back, he realized nothing had been wasted. Every step, even the painful ones, led him closer to his purpose. God had been guiding him all along. Thank you, dear friends, for joining us for another episode of Bible for Children. Today we learned that those who trust in God are never truly alone. Even in dark times, God is turning pain into purpose and dreams into reality. In our next story, we'll continue to follow God's great plan for his people. A plan full of miracles and love. So don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to stay on this wonderful journey through the Bible. And remember, God is never late. He makes everything happen at the perfect time.